Okay, and here we are. It's Henry. Oh, who? Henry Weston's old mate, the podcast with a speech impediment. Sorry about that. Good start. I'm Phil Walton, and I'm here with Stu Butler. Hi, Stu.
Hello, Phil. I won't make any jokes about your mispronunciation there because we could get bombarded with emails from people who I may have offended from whatever country they think I tried to impersonate.
It's a completely inclusive podcast, so if you have a
Very
speech
much
impediment,
so.
you are very welcome here as well.
Yes.
Anyway, right, false start and all that, but we'll just ride it out and crack on. Just keeping well. How are you doing?
Really good. I am on a slight digital detox. Not necessarily taking your lead from the other day. I am trying to reduce my screen time predominantly in the evenings, but trying to filter out a bit of social media. It just not completely. I use it a lot, but just filter it out a bit. My screen time, as discussed previously, has been up around 4 hours at weekends and easily around 3 hours during the day. So this week I have had no screen time after 7 o'clock. And I actually, no iPads or phones, and we haven't actually turned the telly on this week yet. Monday, Tuesday, I know it's only Wednesday, so no telly yet. I've read half of Jeremy Clarkson's book that my in-laws gave me for Christmas, so it's been quite good. And I've keeping up with another chapter of my podcast book that I promised you I'd finish.
Good, very good. I'm proud of you. Well done. No, the social media kind of moratorium on my side is working well. I kind of just with kind of activities around cycling clubs and those sorts of things, I have to check in every so often. But I've found a way to link Instagram to Facebook and Twitter, so I actually don't have to do an awful lot. So that's worked out all right, and I'm not missing it at all. I'm 19 days without actually checking in to see if I've got any messages or what's going on in the world, and I feel a whole lot better for it.
Oh, that's good. I haven't been tagging you when I've put things out just because I didn't want you to get the notifications and wonder what was going on. So well done, you. And is that a? Can you see this being a?
It's a means to breaking it down. What I don't want to do is lose contact with people because me and you reconnected through Facebook, yeah. So it has its place. But just to break a bad habit with Facebook and Twitter particularly, and just put myself back in control rather than the screen controlling me.
Yeah, good man. Quite right too.
Yeah. So enough of the pleasantries and the preamble and the bumbling along. So we've got an episode planned for now where we're actually going to talk about goals and setting them. Which is good. I think we'd said just before we started recording, we're both looking forward to kind of talking, given that we've done some research on it, which is good. But before we get stuck into it, let's just project forward on the horizon. Next episode coming along, we've got a guest joining us. Tell us about that, Stu.
Yeah, well, I've got a gentleman. His name's Adam Coleman. I bumped into him on Twitter, basically. I'd caught a few of his... Adam has a similar story to me. It's alcoholism-based. He is in recovery. He is working through a program called It Starts Monday, a group. I think they all get together. It's a paid subscription via Curtis... Oh, what's his name? Curtis Woodhouse, is it? The footballer and... Boxer. English boxing champion. Yeah. But he is actually putting out short clips on Twitter, basically little short daily videos. But I just caught a couple of them, and he's just something about him caught my attention, and I fired him a message off. And we talked for about 35 minutes on Saturday, and his story, well, not that it's pissing up the wall competition, but his story blows my story out of the water by far. What he has been through over a period of his life. So Adam is going to come on, and it will be a life story really over a period of one episode. And Adam hopefully will come back and join us again in the future. But we will go through all manner of things. It will be starting at the bottom where it was really bad. Adam will give us a brief background of himself, talk us through the bad points, right up to the good stuff. So hopefully there'll be a lot more positives than negatives. But as we know with addiction and recovery, it always starts low, but we will talk through that. But then hopefully Adam will, we will learn, or Adam will share with us what he's been through to get to where he is today, which is a very, very positive influence across Twitter. And in his It Starts Monday group, he's been doing it for a year now. He's lost some weight. He's found his mental health. He's found a happy place, which is, I think, what everyone strives for. And particularly in recovery, if you can find happiness, you really are halfway there to cracking it, I reckon.
Yeah, absolutely. So that sounds exciting. It sounds like a good guest to have on. So we'll look forward to that. Let's talk about then today's episode with goals.
My first goal, Phil, is to remind everyone to like, rate, and review. I always forget.
Okay.
So please like this. If you're watching it on YouTube, like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you're catching us just in your earphones, just drop us a 5-star review and share it around. That's the other thing I would ask. We love the reviews. Thanks for everyone who has. Thanks for everyone who's favorited us via Anchor and Spotify. If you can share it, it's just one simple click, but it really does help us with the algorithm. That word I always struggle with. We want to get this out there, not to generate money, but to generate recovery within the community. So now let's talk goal setting, Phil. Sorry.
That's all right. No worries. No, you're quite right. So this was your angle, actually. So give us the context of how you wanted to talk about this and where you want to start.
Well, it's still January. I've been this new year, new me. I've not signed up to New Year, new me, but I see it a lot on social media. And I set some goals last year, New Year's resolutions, if you will. And I've set some maybe harsher ones on myself this year. But it got me to thinking about, in recovery, and this won't be just about recovery, this episode, but I have had to be very careful with my goal setting. But as I have achieved my goals and as I have moved, towards a happy, stable life, 4 years into sobriety, I'm able to set strenuous or harder to achieve goals. And I'm actually finding that I'm able to work towards them with a very disciplined, regimental approach almost. And I just thought, why don't we look into today how the textbooks tell us you should set goals and work towards them, but then I wanted to offset that somewhat from a recovery perspective, because let's be honest, it's all very well if you're of stable mind and you are not a recovering addict, or you're not suffering from any trauma in your life, you can set a goal. I'm going to run a marathon. Let's say I'd like to run a marathon. That's quite an achievable goal, and with a certain amount of training, disciplined diet, you will probably get there. And if you fail, then it's not the end of the world. You've got a bit fitter. You've probably learned something about yourself, and hopefully you understand why you failed, but your life will carry on, hopefully as per normal. And in recovery, if you set yourself a goal that you might not achieve, or if you set the bar a little bit too high, in the simplest terms, recovery or failure could quite easily equal relapse. And that is what you always want to avoid when you're in recovery. So today I thought hopefully we could look at goal setting, and hopefully we could look about or work out how in recovery you can still set goals, and they still need to be set. There has to be a certain amount of hard work towards them, but you also have to have this quite conscious, or be quite conscious of the fact that if it's yourself or you're working with someone, that they need to be able to achieve, and a failure, if there is going to be a failure or a setback getting to these goals, then it has to be very carefully managed, because you don't want failure to equal relapse.
Okay. So it sounds like from in a non-addiction world, the consequences or the stakes are just not as high. Like you say, you fail at running a marathon, shit happens, but you'll probably get over it quite quickly. But even a small failure for an addict could be a trigger for a relapse.
Trigger's a very good word. I wish I'd said that.
Okay, so you've talked about setting some goals for yourself, and like we talked on the last episode about things like you want to cook more.
Yeah.
And even with something quite as mundane as cooking more, if the wheels start to come off in that sense for an addict, that you're saying that even something quite as mundane as that might be a trigger for, I've set myself this goal that I'm going to cook every Tuesday for the next 6 months. And if you get into the first 3 weeks and you've only done it once, that could be a trigger.
Yeah. I think potentially in early recovery, I think any slight, and that's the problem, isn't it? Because you can't wrap anyone up in cotton wool. And I think you have to approach someone in recovery with a certain amount of the softly kid glove approach. You can't wrap them up in cotton wool. You have to expose them to the potential risks. But yeah, I mean, that would seem like something as simple as that would seem like a very achievable goal, wouldn't it? And should be. But
so I agree. I think it should be.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I wanted to get into is kind of, you talked a little bit earlier on about kind of what the textbooks say, and what the textbooks say, and then how we build that into our daily lives can be very different.
Yeah.
And I quite like the cooking analogy because it should be really simple. And I think it's important. I think it's a good opportunity to go through kind of what the textbook would say in terms of what you want to do.
Yeah.
Versus actually how you're going to get there. So things like the textbooks will say, and this is kind of well trodden, easily trodden, but also easily misunderstood as well. They talk about SMART objectives.
Yes.
So objectives that are SMART, so specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. Okay, so really, really simple. And then you can kind of break that down a little bit. So be specific about your deadline, about your what it is that you want to do, Stu. So you want to cook.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But be specific, because cooking can be putting hot water on pot noodles. It can be microwaved beans on toast.
Yeah.
Or it could be, lobster thermidor with, the works. So what is the specific around your cooking?
My specific aim for this year was to cook more. To cook from scratch. Let's be honest. That's what I wanted to do more of. I didn't want to be putting chicken nuggets and oven chips in the oven for my daughter and packet pizzas and shop bought coleslaw on the plate for me and my wife. And it's something that I'd gotten into not a nasty habit, a lazy habit of over the last 2 years. And bear in mind that the 2 years before that, I was sort of learning to be sober. So I wasn't much good then. So it's probably been 5 years, because there was the really heavy year of active addiction. And so it's probably 5 years since I used to come home regularly and peel spuds, peel carrots, chop cucumbers, make pasta sauces from the tomatoes from my garden, all the things that I used to do and I've always enjoyed doing, and moved away from. So specifically, I wanted to get back to, as much as I could, preparing, perhaps that's the word I'm looking for, preparing and then cooking a family meal most evenings.
Most evening. Okay. So this is the thing. This is where it starts to become fun stroke fucking annoying, because you've just said cooking from scratch. So
Yeah.
how far does that go in terms of specifics? Does that mean if you're going to have pasta, you're going to make your pasta? If you're going to have pizza, if you're
sadly not. It could,
okay.
couldn't it?
It could, yeah. If you're gonna make pizza, are you going to make the base yourself? Those sorts of things. So I think people just get the misunderstanding that it's going to be okay. It's specific enough to say I'm going to peel some veg and cook a home cooked dinner from scratch. But actually, when we start to move through the rest of that, it actually requires a bit more. Something as simple as I want to cook most nights, and even most nights is not specific.
Yeah.
So
leave yourself an out there.
Yeah, exactly. And then if you leave yourself an out, at some point you're going to take it.
Yes. Yeah. As I put in our notes off screen that we've exchanged, wishy-washy goals allow people to cheat.
Yeah.
And human nature is to find the easiest route or the easiest solution to a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And when we are tired at the end of the day or potentially under stress, it is very, very easy to convince ourselves that it's not cheating by pouring the water on the pot noodle, or it's not cheating by heating up the macaroni cheese from the freezer. When realistically, we know to make a pretty half decent macaroni cheese is probably only going to take us 25 minutes, but we very easily convince ourselves to not do that. That is human nature. Specific. Yeah. So then if we moved on to,
If we move on to measurable, and on the face of it, measurable looks like, have I done it? If I'm going to say most nights, let's challenge that and be specific. Let's say every weeknight, and then you've got cheat weekend, whatever it is that you want to do. But one, it's measurable from that point of view. But two, is it measurable from a success in that, did you burn it? Did it taste nice? Did everybody enjoy it?
Yeah.
The measures don't just, it's not just ticking the box. It's about adding value to that as well. So again, it kind of, you have to really, is the juice worth the squeeze, as they say, with it all? If you're making something that nobody else wants to eat, then kind of what's the point?
Yeah. And to be honest, I have cooked most nights this year, but I am still preparing. More often than not, I am preparing something for me and my wife, and I'm preparing something that I know our daughter will eat as well. We're trying to make it one meal, but for the sake of everyone's sanity and for the sake of the little one having food in her stomach, So is that cheating? I don't know. It's, if we're talking about measurable, her plate is empty more often than not when it potentially wouldn't be. And I mean, if we're measuring it about my stress levels compared to when I'm not trying to make an effort to cook, it's a lot more stressful, I've noticed.
So, but again, kind of your measures are what you make them, so that it's not, if you set the bar so high, you're going to fail. Is it got to be that daughter has a clean plate every single time? That's probably, setting yourself up to fail. So yes, is it measurable? Yes, but what does success looks like against those measures is kind of an interesting concept as well. I think achievable or attainable, that often fits in with, is it realistic? So the A and the R often come together. Is it achievable? Is it realistic? So setting yourself up to cook 7 nights a week doesn't allow for an off day. Setting yourself for every weekday doesn't allow for, kind of, if Mrs. Butler has a regular sewing club that she goes to, or you go to AA or child at swimming lessons or whatever, it doesn't always take that into account. So the attainable and realistic are all kind of like thrown in together, because success, it's your success. What does success look like for you? But like you said earlier on, The failure is that, you know, once you've failed once, it's easy just to take that path of least resistance and kind of go, well, fuck this challenge up, so why bother? Sort of thing.
Yeah, and that's I'm going to go slightly off the beaten track here. What you've just said, it's just I've followed a guy on Twitter. I'm not going to mention a name at all, but I followed a guy on Twitter for numerous years, and he has once again in the middle of January failed dry January. And I read it today, and I just knowing we had this in mind, I was just like, my first thought was, why bother? Because it happens every year. But then my second thought is, well, no, well done, you tried. And then a third thought was, was he ever really going to succeed?
Yeah.
Because I think this is the fourth year he's failed dry January. So, yeah, with this in mind today, I thought, how could one go about addressing that problem? He's obviously setting himself a goal. He's I won't mention any more because it might give it away.
Yeah. But I think what that example just illustrates really is that, and like we're talking about with these smart objectives, and you know the final one being time limited or time bound, you know, giving yourself that deadline. So his deadline was 31st of January. But as we've illustrated through this, that if you're actually going to deliver on these goals, it actually requires some preparation. You know, have you got your ingredients? Have you got the right nights of the week and all of that sort of stuff? But it also requires a fundamental change.
Yes.
So if you're still socializing with the same people, going to the same places throughout January, the temptation will be that that person would have a drink.
Yeah.
And likewise, if you're trying to cook a 5-course meal 7 nights a week, the reality is that that's going to wear thin pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And you know, the nuggets will be in the cooker before you know it.
Yes, and there will be and almost that's another year written off, because I mean it's happened. I think I set out 2 years ago. I set a very simple task. It was cooking related again. I was going to cook. I have an abundance. I have a small library of cooking books, as my wife likes to joke about. And 2 years ago, I set what I thought was achievable task of cooking 1 meal a week from my cookbooks. And I'd failed by February, and I didn't start again.
Right.
I don't know and that should have been massively achievable. To be honest, in the end, I completely forgot about it. But after, I think, the 3rd week or the 4th week in January, when I didn't do it, I can't remember what I was thinking, but and that was it for the rest of the year. So,
and this is an interesting. This is an episode on its own, actually. Our relationship with failure.
Yeah.
Because failure to a lot of people means I can't do it. Why bother? Whereas to those people who generally succeed in life, in whatever discipline or whatever it is that they do, they see failure as a learning opportunity.
Yeah.
And where we look at things like New Year's resolutions or goals to achieve in the new year, we actually treat them like birthday wishes. We actually expect that they're not going to come true.
Right. Yeah.
So you kind of like, I'm going to do this for an entire year. Very few people actually get through that. And the people that do are dedicated and commit to learning where they've gone wrong as well.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with you in that example year where you've said, I'm going to cook once a week out of my cookbook, messing it up by February and then going, right, okay, what's stopping me? That was a learning opportunity. All right, I did it for 11 and a half months rather than 12, but you know, bloody good effort.
Yeah, that's it. And I should have. You shouldn't. Yeah, failure in the early stage of something shouldn't mean that the end goal, it still is achievable. I mean, dry January isn't achievable if you have a drink on the 19th, but pretty dry January or going dry from the 19th to the 31st will still come with a learning experience and a sense of achievement. All right, I dropped the ball, or for whatever reasons, but I got back on and I understood why. And yeah, it's 30 out of 31. If you're not a recovering alcoholic, that's still a pretty good January.
Yeah. I also see there's an interesting thing that I find around. So dry January people will often fail at, and there are other kind of month-long challenges like that. But the one that seems to succeed pretty well because people just love looking like dickheads is Movember.
Yeah.
And there will be psychology around that, because you feel like you're depriving yourself of alcohol when you're doing dry January. You're not really depriving yourself. Maybe a bit of kind of self-esteem and respect if you grow a nasty moustache, but Movember doesn't really feel like you're losing anything. In fact, you're gaining something. You're gaining a new friend on your upper lip.
Yeah, I did it for 2 years, and my wife, girlfriend 1 year, fiance the second year. She hated it both times. Same person. Yeah, she wasn't Mrs. Butler. She wasn't Mrs. She was the second year. She was a Mrs. Butler to be. But yeah,
down, and he's not done it again.
No, I was told that I would never be doing that again.
Yeah, but the just bringing us back onto the beaten track. When we've talked about kind of AA and the language around that is absolutely perfect for people in crisis who want to achieve goals, and those goals are so clear and so time bound and realistic in the way that we've just described those SMART objectives. And you've described before, it's like, really the only thing that you're focused on is get to the end of the day without a drink. But if that's far away, get to the end of the hour without a drink. And if that's too far away, get to the end of this minute without a drink. And actually that is absolutely perfect in terms of just this great big idea of I'm going to do 12 months or I'm going to be sober for life, and bringing it right down to the minutiae of what do I need to do right now to get through this bit. Is I think I know we had a lot to say about AA and the meetings, but that was one thing that I thought was absolutely spot on with just getting you beyond, not you personally, but getting people beyond those crisis moments.
Yeah, and it's that theory. It's such a simple theory. Well, the two theories of one day at a time. If you don't have that first drink, you can't get drunk. But people battling that want to consume alcohol minute by minute, hour by hour. But if people are struggling, if you're listening to this thinking every New Year's resolution, I fail it by the middle of January, I'm not suggesting you adopt a recovery type approach, but if you read into some of the mindsets of addiction recovery, it could certainly put you on the track of, I'm not going to eat chocolate. Don't think I'm not going to eat chocolate. If you say that at the start of the year, the 1st of February is a long way off if you're going to have a month off the chocolate. But tomorrow, if you just think to yourself, well, I'll get through to tomorrow, 31 days will go pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll lose a few pounds and save a few quid.
Unless you're substituting it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to eat chocolate, but I'm going to eat crisps instead.
Yeah, well, I'm interested. I mean, I didn't weigh myself, but I'm interested to see. So I've obviously off a few things, pizza and ice cream and blah blah blah. So I've been substituting my sort of Cornetto or my Mars ice cream bar that I'd have every couple of days I've substituted that with a very boring and mundane, very cheap Rocket ice lolly from the freezer. So that's about 90 calories. And what's a cornetto is about 230 calories. So I'll be interested to see at the end of the month. You know, and I'm not substituting the chocolate with anything, you know, or the Haribo. So let's see how that goes. But yeah, getting back to the point, yeah, if you break it down into smaller portions, you know, a year's a hell of a long time, a month's a hell of a long time, a week's a long time for some, but a day isn't quite so long. And you know, you get to the end of it, get yourself to sleep, wake up and go again.
Yeah. And that's kind of where I am at the moment so I'm on a health kick, which I hope will extend beyond January. It's much more longer term than that. But things like, you know, snacking has not been a good friend of mine. So, you know, and working from home, you have to walk past the fridge all the time, and it's just a disaster for me. So, you know, it starts with not having snacks in the house.
Yes.
That makes it harder to snack if you haven't got anything to snack on.
Yeah.
But I give myself a treat. So there are still some chocolates and stuff knocking around from Christmas. I'll have a small piece of chocolate. So it'll be like a Dairy Milk. It'll be one square.
Yeah.
Some point in the evening, that's my treat for getting through that far, as opposed to necking a whole bar of chocolate through during the day, or get through half a packet of biscuits while I'm on a flipping meeting that I'm not interested in.
Yeah.
You know, you just fill the time with biscuits and tea and stuff like that. So, yeah, but yeah, everything in moderation is a nonsense thing, because if you've done things to extremes in the past, we've talked about this in another episode, but if you've done things to extremes in the past and expect moderation to get you somewhere, then
it's complete bullshit.
Yeah, then you're setting yourself up to fail. But you know, so there's my snacking, and then I've set myself a target of exercising 5 days out of 7.
That's good.
And I'm so far we're at the 19th of January, and I'm succeeding with that.
Good,
So
well done.
An outdoor run, an outdoor bike ride, or an indoor bike ride. So one of those 3 is happening.
I'm sure some people who might not be into turbo trainers are picturing you up and down the stairs around your landing on a very small bicycle about now.
Yeah, well, 2 rolling pins. That's all it is.
Yeah, I'd like to see you on an indoor bike ride.
Yeah, well, you know, maybe we'll share that on a video at some point. Anyway. So where are we going next? There was kind of a bit of chat really around. So we've touched on recovery and goal setting from a physical drinking point of view, but as we've discussed at length in the past, it's all interlinked with physical health, mental health, and kind of actually, and you hit the nail on the head, and it was a nail that I didn't know existed when we were talking about your story about it's actually got to mean something. If you're going to stop being drunk, there's got to be happiness at the end of that.
Yeah, and that's And
talk about that from kind of goal setting then, I guess.
Well, I just as I was making notes for this podcast and researching and doing stuff that I haven't done since I studied for that degree that I don't use many moons ago, not quite as many moons ago as you do use your degree. But I just ended up ranking sort of my goals in recovery in order of importance. And just to make sure, this is my opinion, this hasn't been taken from anything, but it was just 4. Were they goals? They probably were. Looking back, they might not have been goals. They were just things that I achieved along the way. But now, if I was to help someone, do some mentoring or sponsoring in a non-AA kind of way, they'd probably be 4 things that I would use, but they, in order of importance, it ends with happiness. But to get to happiness, first I had to get sober, so sobriety, and that is the AA, the 1 day at a time. You'll see it hashtagged on a lot of recovery things, but that was, from a pure standpoint, in its purest form, that was my one goal for the rest of my life: sobriety. And if anything else came along from, if my family, if I'd ended up on my own, if my wife had decided it was too much, if my parents had decided I'd done too much, but I was sober, I still could have a fulfilling life of some description. I'd probably be a miserable sod, blah blah blah. But I had to be sober. And then for me, what came next was mental health and well-being, because I was mentally in a horrible place. But once I got sober and the mind fog cleared, I was able to work on my mental health. And once my mental health was on the up, I was able to concentrate or bring physical health into it. So we've gone from sober to working on mental health, then up to my physical health, and tried to build my body back up to a point. And then the fourth point of this chat is happiness. Happiness came as a byproduct of the three previous, so sobriety, mental health, and physical health. They don't equal happiness, but they helped me achieve happiness. And I'm 500% happier the last sort of 18 months to 2 years than I have been at any point in my life. I've had some very happy times in my life that I look back with in fondness, times in the Czech Republic, Holland, certain workplaces in the UK. I was very happy, but I was drinking, and there was always problems with my drinking, even when we've discussed it in podcasts. I look back at times when I was obviously displaying anxiety and or depression, and I was self-medicating with drink for 20 years. So that's sobriety had to come first. I was then able to work on my mental health. After that, I was able to work on my physical health, and all those three combined to me being a happier person. So they're certainly what I would look to encourage. Whether people would do it in that order, some people, a lot of people might get sober, and then you see a lot of addicts. You see, particularly stuff I see in America, there's a lot of these endurance athletes, world-class endurance athletes are recovering addicts. So they don't necessarily swap the whiskey bottle for the running shoes, but it seems to be. So maybe a lot of people might put sobriety, physical health. The physical health gives them the time, go and run for 2 hours a day. That helps you to maybe become at peace with your mind. I don't know.
Yeah. So you'd said something just now about happiness being a byproduct of those things. Did you have to, or do you think you should work on being happy, work on happiness? Because you had to work at sobriety, you had to then focus on mental health, had to focus and work on physical health.
Yeah. Does
happiness, this is quite a hypothetical, metaphorical kind of, I don't know, off on a real tangent here question. You
do have to work on happiness, but then on the flip side of that, happiness should be a human right, shouldn't it? We should all be entitled to happiness. But
I guess it depends on what happiness means to you as well, because the outward expression of happiness might be, stereotypically, it's a smile on your face with a very pleasurable demeanor that's kind of, is welcoming and unoffensive and those sorts of things. But like you say, some people are absolutely happiest when they've got something to grumble about.
Yeah.
And I remember, I don't know if you watched it, it was a couple of years ago now, but Ricky Gervais, Steve Merchant, and the dude who was actually the idiot, whose name I can't remember, but he was the idiot abroad. It was a Sky.
Oh, Carl
Pilkington, something like that.
Had a holiday home in Deal for a period.
Oh, did he? Okay. But they were talking to him, send him all over the world. He was just bloody miserable the whole time.
I watched series 1. Yeah.
Yeah. So another, I can't remember how many there were. There weren't that many. But at one episode, Ricky Gervais asked Carl Pilkington, you moan all the time. Nothing ever seems to be good enough for you. When are you happiest? And he took a long time to answer, but he just said, I think when I'm comfortable.
Do you know, from happiness and mental health, I think for me would go pretty closely together. And I think I measure my mental health quite easily in a sense, but how well I'm sleeping almost. If I'm sleeping quite well, pretty much, things are pretty good, in my world, or I know things are pretty good in my world if I'm sleeping well, which I do a lot more often than not nowadays. But yeah, like for years of my life, I wanted to be seen as miserable. It made me unapproachable, which I also wanted. I didn't want to be bothered. I only wanted to speak to people if I approached them. But these were the periods, this was up to 4 years ago, from the time I left school to the age of 37, I was consuming vast amounts of something that we know makes us more miserable than happy, really, in the long run. Alcohol puts a downer on the mood more often than it puts an upper.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's I think it's an interesting. It kind of goes back right to the very beginning about if one of your goals is being happy, it has to be definable.
Yeah.
And how you, the specifics and the measurable of that, and how long do you need to be happy for you to say that on the whole I'm happy? Can you have some unhappy moments? And it's a hard one really to. I understand what you say about it being a byproduct, and I think comparing the Stuart of 2022 versus the Stuart of 2017, if that's the comparison, then it's measurable in terms of happiness, then it's very clear. But, as an ongoing part of your sobriety, will happiness in 2026 be as good as, better or worse than 2022? And is all of those outcomes acceptable?
We'll find out. For me, in the last, I've come to the conclusion that I am a happier person when I am working towards something. That took me a long time to work out, because for the period, let's say the period of between 30 and 34, I can't remember exactly what I was doing, but I went through a period of my life where I didn't really have any work goals, but I was happy at work. I was happy taking my paycheck home, doing my 40 hours and taking my paycheck home and watching telly most evenings, going out with friends at the weekends, playing sport, playing some golf during the week. In the summer months, I was a happy person. I wasn't an alcoholic at that time. I think I was single, and I was enjoying life, but I had no direction. And I would go through, if I look back, there were periods within, say, a period of a year, there would be periods of weeks where I would suffer from anxiety and then I would medicate with alcohol. But for all intents and purposes, I was happy in those periods, but I had absolutely no direction and no goals. Now, after last year, my money goal that went better, me and my wife still discuss it and she thinks it was a complete failure, but it wasn't. So I'm not having any of that. It was a successful year. And my running, my my times didn't improve. I still run 9 to 10 minute miles. I don't think they'll ever get any quicker. That's a physical thing. I think I'm, well, I'm obviously over my peak, and I just don't think I'm ever. But I increased my mileage, and I feel so much better about that. My waistline didn't decrease much, but my mental state was improved. It is improved through physical exercise. So I now know that I have to keep exercise. I want to keep exercising, but my French, I did it last week. My 2 hours. I've done about, we're on Thursday. I've done about an hour and a quarter of French this week. I will try and get that up to 2 hours by Sunday. I'm not going to do 2 hours every week, but I am happier and I sleep better. I'm sleeping better. I sleep better when I seem to not necessarily strive might be the wrong, well, it might be too strong because I'm not striving, but I am working towards it, and I'm setting them out in podcasts, I'm setting them out in blogs, and that really does seem to hold me accountable, more accountable, which I like. I like that. So perhaps that's, that would go back to the measurable aspect of the smart system.
Very good. Okay. Somehow we've got way beyond our allotted time, and there is so much more to talk about. So we'll have a chat at some point about whether we're going to do a part 2 of goal setting or whether we're going to move on to other subjects. But it flies every time, and really interesting. I think some of those things that you've spoken about as well, I think we're kind of spend some time thinking myself about, just how I'm going to be able to bring my goals for this year into an even more kind of micro view, so that I can just kind of get clarity on where I'm going to go with it over the next 6 months specifically. So
that's something I want to if it's my French, I mean, my cooking will look after itself really, because we're on a good routine of buying decent produce in, and that's more than enough, and limiting the bad produce. But it's the French, it's something like that if I'm not careful will slip. So I think I almost do have to, I've got the Duolingo, so I can do 10 minutes in my break at work. I can, when I get in when the little one gets in from school, I can do 15 minutes on Babbel. But I do still need to make sure there is a structure, because I'll slip. And before we know it, an hour's gone past in this podcast, but before I know it, a month will have gone past. And and that's what's lethal, because then 12 months have gone.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So, and you get to practice your French when you go flying down slopes in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So that'll be good. Okay. So our next episode will be hopefully before you get away to France, and it will be with, I've forgotten his name.
Adam Coleman. Yeah.
Adam Coleman. That's it.
Adam's keen to record next week. So that would be good. That will be, as we've said, that will be a standalone episode, but that will be obviously addiction recovery based. It will be a bio, or Adam will run us through his life, the ups, the downs, and I've also got another young lady I'm chatting with. She's going to come. She's keen to come on. Sorry, Mrs. Butler. But I won't mention any names till that. She has confirmed today that she would love to come on and have a chat with us. Having spoke with Becca, I don't want to say it would be good to bring a female perspective to things, because addiction isn't gender-based, but it's just another story. And I will be interested to hear another female story of addiction, because rightly or wrongly, I think a lot of people will still picture an alcoholic as probably a male sitting somewhere cold, swigging a strong cider, and we know that it's not that. So Adam's story is certainly going to be eye-opening, and then there will be another story to come after the 7th of February. That is when, in discussions, we've said we won't be able to record before then, but she is certainly keen to come on and have a chat with us, Phil.
Very good. Okay, so light like, rate, review.
Yeah.
Everybody's reached the end of the episode. There was also a chap called Tom who had emailed into the Henry Weston's old mate hwomthepod@gmail.com. His name's Tom from the States.
Yeah, Tom,
nice message.
Mr. Tom Werner. He's in the greenkeeping for, he's a turfy. He dropped me a wonderful email. He'd caught a blog I wrote and caught a podcast, and he was very impressed with what we were putting out. So his words, not ours.
Yeah. So So hi Tom, and thanks for that. But anybody else who wants to send a message or any discussion points you want us to cover, then be in touch. That's about it, isn't it?
That is, mate. I don't know where the time's gone. We haven't got. I'm not even on. I had 6 pages of notes, and I've turned 2 pages over. That's where it goes.
Excellent. Good. Means we're talking a lot of shit. But anyway, right. Well, we will see you next week with Adam. And really look forward to that. We've got some homework to do. But until then, have a good week, Stu.
Yeah, and you, Phil. Been a pleasure to chat as always, mate.
Cheers, pal.